Hello everybody and welcome back to Spacedock. I'm Joanna, and since it is spooky season, we're having a look at the spooky cosmic horrors of sci-fi. Naturally, they exist outside of it too, but I find the ways that the cosmic horror subgenre gets applied to sci-fi are intriguing in their own right. The way that unknowable terror gets applied in contrast to man-made wonders and forward-looking human-level stories is its own unique flavour in and of itself. One such human-level story with a focus on paranoia is The Thing, and I mention it not because of its similarities to Lovecraftian media like its location, but because of Dead Space. This took the brilliant body-morphing idea from The Thing and integrated it into a cosmic horror story. To start with, it doesn't seem that way as it's just dealing with the necromorphs on the Ishimura, but as you start uncovering what's going on, you start finding all the weirdness. This is when the hallucinations ramp up and cult behaviour becomes more overt, along with finding out about the mysterious markers at the heart of everything. Later games go much more in depth on this, revealing that the culty stuff from 1 is really a huge organised religion with long-term ties to the markers, which themselves have a power over the necromorphs that verges on the metaphysical. And then the last game and its story DLC go all out and show what everything has been building up to: the awakening of the Brethren Moons and essentially the end of civilization at their hands, or mouths. It's a build-up to something that's very Lovecraftian, even if the moons themselves are essentially just ancient alien life. Homeworld Emergence, or Cataclysm, does something similar with The Beast. This is a weird robotic biological hybrid that takes over both machines and organics, with an unknown ageless origin somewhere in hyperspace. What makes this one special is that it largely relies on your imagination, with most of its effects only really being known through audio. But it goes beyond the goopy stuff of the necromorphs because it speaks, it makes deals and has complex reasoning. It's a very interesting take on things, but it sadly was essentially expunged in universe and then expunged from canon. A shame really, since the idea that hyperspace might be malignant in the setting is a pretty cool one, though we don't really have to go far in other settings to find the same thing. Like in Event Horizon, where the cosmic horror is in some ways a little more indirect. Here it stems from the strange side effects that come from using the gravity drive, which works by plunging the ship through what seems to be hell with a capital H. This causes the ship itself to be sort of haunted, driving those aboard mad with hallucinations of their deepest fears to the point where they end up killing each other. The special thing with this movie though is the very clear religious undertones it has, made all the more obvious with the direct references to hell through Latin chanting. It's also known for the fan theory that it's linked to Warhammer 40k, but is the warp there cosmic horror? I don't know really, it does hit many elements of it, but it has so many knowable and at least semi-logical elements embodied within it that it kind of verges on the edge. The Chaos Gods are a bickering pantheon rather than something Lovecraftian, unlike the Catan, who are much more overtly meant to be cosmic horror from the outset. They did move away from that a bit with the Necron rework that inverted the relationship between the metal skeletons and their gods. In some sense, that's another shame really, since the setting at large is certainly capable of far more, like whatever was going on with the fan-made Astartes series. Like Warframe, which has its own weird alternate dimension called the Void, which is the source of all the basically magic powers the player gets to use. By itself, the Void is a strange place with black stars, multiple distinct regions, and its own physical laws, and is overtly meant to be Lovecraftian in design. It drives people mad, can inflict sentience upon animals, or conjure up whole places out of someone's thoughts and feelings. Already it's hitting cosmic horror, but within the Void lies the Man in the Wall. Affectionately known by the player base as Wally, this being is seemingly a personification of the Void itself, though really we don't know, and I hope we never know for sure. Is the Albrecht Dentrati we're currently chasing in the story the real him, or Wally's Void copy of him? We don't know. What's the deal with hands? We don't know, and it's weird. What is Wally after with his handymen and angels? We don't know yet. Some of these can be answered, but many shouldn't. The mystery behind these things is what keeps them interesting and special. For example, Babylon 5 and Mass Effect. Let's start with B5 and the Shadows, which were a background level mystery that expanded into one of the two main storylines in the show. The insectoid shadows themselves are a bit spooky and weird with their invisibility and how they manipulate younger races, but it's their spacecraft that are the true cosmic horrors. These ships are fantastic. They ignore the rules everyone else uses for faster than light, look totally unlike anything else, and are incredibly powerful. Some of those elements put them into cosmic horror land, but what really does is the unsettling effect they have on people, and they nail the Lovecraftian sleeping god vibes when a buried, dormant one straight up killed somebody who touched it. But then they were explained, at least partly. The other cosmic horror in the setting was the third space aliens, who were explicitly meant to elicit Lovecraftian themes in their designs and story. And yeah, they did that, invading from an alternate dimension through an ancient hidden artifact with telepathic powers strong enough to take over even the Vorlons. In some ways, they were better than the Shadows, but the compressed nature of the movie lacked the build-up of that main storyline. But then it had the plus of not needing to be explained, which is what made the Reapers less interesting in Mass Effect, which in many ways is just Babylon 5 again. The station is the station, Asari are the Minbari, Reapers are the Shadows, and so on and so forth. But it's not all exactly the same. Reapers go a lot harder on the control over their minions than the Shadows do, to the point where even an outright dead one can completely convert people who spend too much time in close proximity to it. But then as the story progressed, their motivations were explained, and the unknowable, unfathomable ancient beings became known and fathomed, for better or for worse. That's the problem with having an ancient cosmic force be the antagonists. When you want to expand on them for a satisfying story, they lose a part of that intangible quality that made them threatening, terrifying villains in the first place. That's some of the ones I'm most familiar with. Now let's look at some of the common threads that run through them and others that makes them feel like cosmic horror in the first place. We have ancient beings, alternate dimensional universe, transformation, and cults and deals. Ancient beings is right up there as being very important for this trope. It ties into the unknown and terrifying if something is so ancient it comes from a time before time, carrying with it some long-lost secrets of the universe. It also builds on the mythological element if it's from prehistory, and the sci-fi angle of this usually takes this as being one of, if not the, first intelligent beings to arise in the universe, rather than just being from some nebulous earlier time period. The alternate dimension is another very common part of cosmic horror, with the obvious sci-fi part of it being a tie-in to that dimension being used for faster-than-light travel. The alternate dimension can also be a driving force for transformation. Those exposed to the alternate reality can end up being irrevocably changed by it, be it mentally or physically. But transformation in sci-fi can also come through technological means such as implants or nanotechnology or some other hand-wavy thing. And transformation ties into the final thread, the way a cosmic horror may foster a sense of devotion towards it in those that are exposed to it in some manner. This isn't required, of course, since the cosmic horror or others under its sway can simply be using its power to recruit others, be it through some religious cult or just making deals. Though those are also not required for a malevolent entity to gain control of people, which again can have links back to transformation. Clearly, cosmic horror, or at least things that are cosmic horror aligned, makes for fruitful inspiration for sci-fi stories and settings, or different interpretations of them. But it's not necessarily appropriate to use certain elements of it everywhere. For example, you can't successfully jam it into Star Trek because the setting is just too rational and optimistic to fit a malignant, unknown eldritch being. But it is possible to use some of the threads I mentioned earlier, but applied to something that isn't horror, like with Vija. So there's many Lovecraftian things that can be used to spice up settings that it works in, but a creator does have to be wary of going too far with explanations that can ultimately undo what makes cosmic horror so interesting in the first place. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate and spacefighter design reference books. Alternatively, you can support us directly through YouTube by becoming a channel member. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.